I'm Matt McClure, and this is Currents. A dismal unemployment report shows jobs in jeopardy while the country's debt is in doubt. Does the U.S. economy have a prayer?
We still have a long way to go and a lot of work to do to give people the security and opportunity that they deserve.
Plus, the kids are out of school for the summer, so why not take a vacation from Mass? Bishop DiMarzio says, think again.
The weekly Eucharist is really, part of the life of the church. Should be part of everybody's life, and there is no vacation from attending Eucharist weekly.
And The Dark Knight or The Man of Steel. Which superhero are you?
If we as Catholic Christians can realize that we are good, the world is good, and that each and every one of us can make a difference, I think that will make all the difference in the world.
Well, good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. Whether you were born on the wrong side of the tracks or born with a silver spoon in your mouth, the impact will vary, but no one is immune from the ups and downs of the U.S. economy. If you see the fiscal glass as half full, the nation is slowly, albeit maybe too slowly, and stubbornly crawling its way toward economic recovery. But if you see the glass as half empty, if you're one of those types, you probably see a country spiraling back into recession. One of the milestones everyone uses to support their particular view of the American economy is the Labor Department's monthly jobs report. And while it's difficult to get Americans to agree on anything, reaction to the latest numbers has been universal.
After hearing this morning's jobs report, I'm sure the American people are still asking the question, where are the jobs?
The country woke up to pretty disappointing news this morning. The Labor Department reported the nation's unemployment rate inched up to 9.2% in June as hiring slowed to a crawl, with employers adding an anemic 18,000 jobs to the economy. The dismal jobs report numbers come at a time of high uncertainty for the U.S. economy as Republicans and Democrats in Congress debate the merits of budget cuts versus tax increases to raise the debt limit, allowing the country to continue paying its bills and borrowing money.
Voting to raise the debt limit's not a fun vote, and it's not a popular vote.
The Senate is basically fiddling while America goes bankrupt.
You have to have a real plan, a binding plan. That
the most vulnerable will have to be the brunt, potentially, of a deal.
So what would Jesus cut or cap as Congress races for a solution and the country gets closer to the August 2nd deadline that could spell economic doom and a risk of default? Father Daniel Murphy of St. Xavier's Church in Park Slope believes Congress should focus on compassion, not cash.
One of the many qualities of Jesus that I admire so much, he was consistently compassionate. People always came first. I think in our budgeting, as difficult as it is, we have to have compassion on people, for people. I think that has to be a top priority. One example among many are older people who depend on Social Security. If those Social Security benefits aren't adequate to meet their needs, not luxurious needs, but basic needs, well, then we have to address that.
The top Democrat in the House, Nancy Pelosi, said any cuts to entitlement benefits are a no-go.
I also want to have full clarity about where House Democrats stand. We do not support cuts in benefits for Social Security and Medicare.
Pelosi did leave the door open to changes in Social Security and Medicare, but rank-and-file liberal Democrats are calling on President Obama to leave entitlements alone. Majority Leader Harry Reid has long said changes to Social Security should not be a part of a deal.
Social Security has not contributed one dime to the deficit.
So it's off the table.
Yes.
But a deal could include significant changes to the program. On the other side of the political aisle, House Speaker John Boehner laid down the Republican bottom line on taxes.
Everything's on the table except raising taxes on the American people.
Still, negotiators, including Boehner, are talking about raising potentially $1 trillion in revenue, in part by closing tax loopholes and getting rid of some tax breaks.
We believe that comprehensive tax reform, both on the corporate side and personal side, would make America more competitive, help create jobs in our country, and it's something that is under discussion.
And the discussion will continue throughout the weekend with the hope that the two parties can work in good faith to give the U.S. economy a prayer.
We'll be working during the weekend, and I will reconvene congressional leaders here on Sunday with the expectation that at that point the parties will at least know where each other's bottom lines are.
Uncertain times indeed. Well, stay tuned. Beginning tomorrow, you'll need to buy a new world map as a long-awaited split in Africa gives birth to the world's newest nation. We'll have that story, plus the rest of the day's headlines, next. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Matt McClure. Coming up later, what do hamburgers, hot dogs, Superman, and faith all have in common? We'll connect the dots for you, but first, let's have a look at today's headlines. The Dalai Lama is visiting Washington for a trip that coincides with his 76th birthday. On Thursday, the Tibetan spiritual leader met with members of Congress, including House Speaker John Boehner and Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi. During a press conference, the Dalai Lama touted the separation of church and state. He fled into exile after China's invasion of Tibet in 1949 and established a democratic exile government in northern India. Now, earlier this year, the Dalai Lama gave up his political role, but is still Tibet's main spiritual leader. Well, the Vatican is not happy with a recent United Nations resolution on sexual orientation and gender identity. The Holy See's representative to the UN Security Council, Archbishop Silvano Tomasi, told Catholic News Agency that the resolution is part of an agenda that could restrict the Catholic Church's freedom. The resolution expresses, quote, grave concern at acts of violence and discrimination against individuals because of their sexual orientation. Archbishop Tomasi described that as an international norm that he says will take hold gradually. He told CNA that he wants to ensure that provisions are made for the freedom of expression on the part of religious leaders. Well, earlier this week, we celebrated Independence Day here in the U.S. Well, a similar celebration is set for this weekend in southern Sudan. Earlier this year, nearly 99% of the country's residents voted to secede from the Sudan after decades of war. Pope Benedict is sending an official delegation to represent him at southern Sudan's independence celebration tomorrow. In a statement, the Vatican called on the international community to support the two countries so, quote, just and fair solutions can be found for questions that are still unsolved. Well, of course, all of this is happening while the Pope is beginning his annual summer vacation. We get details now from Rome Reports.
Benedict XVI has finally arrived at Castel Gandolfo to begin his summer vacation. After arriving by helicopter from Rome, the Pope was greeted by a welcoming committee. Castel Gandolfo is a small Italian town located just 15 miles south of Rome. The town enjoys a nice view over the Lake Albano, which has made it a popular vacation spot for previous popes. After arriving, Benedict XVI gave a blessing to the crowd that gathered to welcome the Pope to his summer residence. The town is a popular attraction for Italians and foreigners, many of them coming in the summer months to attend an Angelus with the Pope.
Italian Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi said Friday he will not run again when his term expires in 2013. He made the remarks in an interview with the Italian daily newspaper La Repubblica. The embattled Italian premier is fighting financial corruption charges and is on trial on charges of abuse of power and prostitution with an underage teenager. Pope Benedict indirectly addressed the scandal earlier this year when he said, quote, politicians must rediscover their spiritual and moral roots. Well, closer to home, embattled priest Father John Corapi, who said in recent weeks he would leave the priesthood, now says he will not return to his religious order despite demands by its leadership to do so. Earlier this week, Father Gerard Sheehan, a leader of the Society of Our Lady of the Holy Trinity, or SOLT, released a statement ordering Father Corapi to take up residence with the society. Father Sheehan said a SOLT investigation into Father Corapi found a pattern of misconduct, including sexual impropriety, drug and alcohol abuse, and violations of his promise of poverty. Corapi left the order and denies any wrongdoing. Well, the U.S. Bishops Conference has committed $2.1 million to help with pastoral work in Latin America. Reports say the money comes in the form of grants for 86 projects in 20 countries. A good chunk of the money will go to rebuilding efforts in Haiti and Chile following earthquakes last year. Los Angeles Archbishop Jose Gomez says that in Haiti, the bishops are trying to help rebuild churches, schools, and convents, and those new buildings are designed to withstand future earthquakes. Well, could Southern California's Crystal Cathedral become a Catholic cathedral? Well, reports say the Diocese of Orange, the nation's 11th largest, is exploring the possibility of buying the 3,000-seat glass structure. The Crystal Cathedral filed for bankruptcy last autumn after its creditors sued for payment. Orange Bishop Todd Brown says the diocese is looking at the landmark house of worship as a possible alternative to building its own cathedral in Santa Ana. The Crystal Cathedral would cost about half of the estimated $100 million it would cost to build a new and first ever cathedral for the diocese. Well, stay with us. You know, it is hot outside, so why not wear your shorts and tees to church? Bishop DiMarzio goes into the deep on that and more coming up next. Welcome back. So please indulge me for a minute here. I'm going to quote the incomparable 80s all-girl mega group, the Go-Go's, on a nationwide summer ritual. Okay, here goes. I feel like I'm at a poetry reading here just a little bit. We need like to lower the lights or something and have people snapping. But here we go. Okay, Go-Go's, right? Vacation, all I ever wanted. Vacation, had to get away. Vacation, meant to be spent alone. Thank you. Yes, I know. Appreciate it very much. Okay, all right. After this ovation has died down, I'll continue. Now, that last part, though, meant to be spent alone, you know, that might just work if Go-Go's frontwoman Belinda Carlisle was not also lamenting a lost love. But the rest of it, really, it certainly works to describe that universal feeling of needing to get away every time the thermometer hits 80 and above. I know I certainly have that feeling. Our economic realities have even created a new kind of vacation for the summer or any time of the year. It's known as a staycation, where people keep the fun closer to home. But the hypothesis does remain, you know, we all do need a break, but the question is, can we take a break from everything? Well, I had a chance to speak with Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio about vacation and the Mass. Bishop DiMarzio went into the deep about the importance of taking a break, just not from Mass attendance or attire. Well, Bishop DiMarzio, thanks so much for being here.
Good to be here all the time.
Really appreciate it very much. Well, the summertime, you know, is really upon us here. As we can't tell by the temperatures outside, summer is upon us. And a lot of people might think, well, okay, I'll just, you know, maybe taking a vacation from school, or, you know, people might have some time off work or whatever. Maybe I'll take a vacation from Mass as well. But that's not that. The church hasn't really rolled up its carpets and said, okay, everybody take a break, right?
No, that's not part of our tradition. The weekly Eucharist is really, you know, part of the life of the church. Should be part of everybody's life, and there is no vacation from attending Eucharist weekly.
Sure. Well, you recently wrote about this very topic in your column in the Tablet, your weekly column that you have there, about attendance over the summer months, but also about attire and things that people wear to Mass during the summer. Talk a little bit about that column and kind of what inspired you to write it.
Well, I do get complaints from parishes and from individuals saying that, why don't you say something about how people come dressed for Mass? And I notice it myself. And I think, again, we're going to become a much more casual society. But there's a limit to how casual you can get, especially when you're coming to Mass. As I was saying, churches are air-conditioned today. There isn't much excuse for dressing down to the point of looking like you're going to the beach, or, you know, trying to get a suntan. I mean, they are air-conditioned, so you can, you know, come properly dressed. And again, suit and tie, well, that's not hasn't become certainly our tradition. But flip-flops and shorts and tank tops are not making the decision. I mean, the cut either. So I think we need to come reasonably dressed for Eucharist, so that we don't become a distraction of the people. That's what happens.
There you go. Well, and is there really any? Maybe, well, I don't know if there's a church rule book on, you know, how to dress, but I mean, is there? Can people just, or do they just kind of use their own judgment and say, like you say, to be reasonably dressed?
I used to be able to say to people, well, you should dress as if you're going to the doctor's. Well, I mean, I've been in doctor's offices lately, and, you know, they're dressed down to the hilt. So that doesn't work. I think people have to use their common sense and say, you know, I'm coming to Mass, and I'm going to dress in a way that's appropriate for going to some place that's important. Again, I think it's common sense, which is maybe a little bit lacking today in some ways. So.
Yeah. So maybe for the guys, nice pair of slacks, a button-up shirt,
right,
at least,
yeah,
you know, maybe a tie or something. You know, for the ladies, not a tank top, not short shorts,
right,
you know, that
sure.
kind of thing. Right. No flip-flops.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
So there we go. Well, along those same lines, and while we're on the discussion, I guess it kind of boils down to what does the attire at Mass, what we wear to Mass, what does it say about us as individuals? And I know you were alluding to this about society as well and how we become more casual also.
Yeah, I think, again, how we dress does say something about how we feel about things. I know just recently I got the request for our Friday dress down days at the office, at the Chancery office. Well, I said, I don't really notice much of a difference. I'm dressing down and dressing up. But finally, okay, yeah, Fridays are dress down days. People want to come more casually, but they basically do come more casual to begin with. But it's probably, you know, something about being Catholic and feeling an obligation to come to Sunday liturgy, and maybe they say, well, I come as I am, you know, I don't have to. Since I have to go, I'll come whenever I can, or how I get there, whatever shape I'm in. Whereas the other, probably specifically Christian groups, I mean, they dress up. I mean, they dress to the nines. Maybe they don't go every week, but when they do come, I mean, they're really well dressed. Yeah. So it was a major difference, and I think that's part of the problem we face is that since people feel obligated to go, they feel, well, I have to go as how I can get there. Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe that's is part of the psychology, but
right.
Who knows?
Well, and you know, I think there's a reason we call it celebrating the Mass. It should be a celebration, really.
Right. It should be something that's important.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Well, Bishop DiMarzio, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it very much. Keep it like a celebration, but don't keep it like you know, one of those celebrations where you're at the beach. I guess is the lesson there. Thank you, Bishop DiMarzio. Well, stay with us. There is more Currents coming up. When we return, we'll go grilling with God to find out what superhero lies within.
I more feel myself in terms of Superman. I'm always trying to find the goodness in others.
1, 0, and liftoff, the final liftoff of Atlantis. On the shoulders of the space shuttle, America will continue the dream.
Well, faster than a speeding bullet and able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. Look up in the sky. It's a bird, it's a plane. No, it's the final launch of the space shuttle Atlantis. It happened earlier today and marks the end of NASA's 30-year-long space shuttle program. And while the U.S. quest to boldly go where no man has gone before comes to an historic end, it does not mark the end of the nation's obsession with all things larger than life, including, of course, outer space and superheroes. Yeah, and nowhere was that fascination more on display than in the backyard of Holy Child Jesus Church in Richmond Hill. If you watch this show with any regularity, you know we're no strangers to a little thing called Theology on Tap around here. Well, never one to kind of follow the herd. They always want to lead the Office of Faith Formation. That's what I'm talking about. They're sponsoring another popular young adult pastime that combines food and faith. They call it Grilling with God. And at this week's installment, there was no shortage of burgers, and there was no shortage on theories on what superheroes can teach us about ourselves and our relationship with God.
I'm a massive geek. I am a massive geek when it comes to comic books. I have been a comic book collector since I was 4 years old.
Theology on Tap went on summer vacation, and we're now here with Grilling with God. And Grilling with God is a time where we come together for a holy hour, and then we have a barbecue, as you can see, I think, behind me, and then we have a talk, similar to Theology on Tap.
I'd like to speak tonight about why I think that we, as Catholics, can learn much from these comic book-based films, especially in light of the concept of theological anthropology.
Theological anthropology is the study of what it means to be a human being in light of God. So issues like sin, grace, freedom, justification, sanctification, those theological concepts, we're going to tonight look at those concepts in light of recent films, summer films. I'm going to particularly focus on 2 films. I'm going to focus in on the Superman series and the Batman series. So I look forward to trying to bring those 2 topics together, bring 2 things I love, theology and movies, theology and superheroes all together, and trying our best to relate this to young people.
Batman views the world as a dark, depressing, cruel world. On the other hand, we have the example of the one who's been described as the Big Blue Boy Scout, the Man of Steel, the Man of Tomorrow, Superman.
With the question of who should Catholics want to emulate between those 2 figures in comic books and films, either Superman or Batman, both are great characters, and I'm much more personally of a Batman fan, but theologically, spiritually, I think that we really could and should see ourselves much more in light of what perhaps a Superman would see. The world is a good place. The world is saved and redeemed by Jesus Christ.
In light of theological anthropology, in light of justification, in light of sanctification, in light of divinization, of becoming a new creation in Christ, are you more of a man of steel or a woman of steel? Or are you more of a dark knight?
I more feel myself in terms of Superman. I'm always trying to find the goodness in others.
The simple difficulty of life, waking up, going to a job, struggling through the existence of everyday life, puts me in sort of a connection with Batman.
I never thought of superhero movies as having a religious message. So that was very, very interesting the way he broke it down between Superman and Batman.
If the character of Batman ever came to me as a priest and wanted to talk, I would tell him, you better lighten up a little bit and realize that you are good, the world is good, and you're making a difference. And if we as Catholic Christians can realize that we are good, the world is good, despite our own personal sin and despite sin in the world, and that each and every one of us, if we continue to strive to be a force for good, we can make a difference. I think that will make all the difference in the world.
Okay, I have to confess, I'm a gigantic Batman fan. As a matter of fact, at a TV station where I used to work, they kept a picture of Michael Keaton as Batman in the control room and asked me to autograph it one day. I don't know what that was about, but they said it was "I am Batman" and it had my name under it. It was pretty funny, actually. But I am a big sucker for the Tim Burton Batman movies. I love those. Batman Returns, the early ones like from late '80s, early '90s. Love those films. Like Superman 2, I gotta admit I'm a Batman fan. Now, theologically speaking, you got to be over more toward the Superman side, I guess. That's the lesson that we learned today. But movies, you can still be a Batman fan if you are, like me, and I hope you are. But it ain't over. The Office of Faith Formation will break out the grill for one more time, for good food and a good talk. If you've got some questions, you can give Paul Morrissey a call at area code 718-281-9584. Or you can tweet him. The Twitter handle is @DOBOFF. Bombard him, people. He's always complaining that he doesn't get enough calls or tweets, okay? Well, that's it for this edition of Currents, but that is not it for the great programming you've come to expect here on NET. No plans tonight? Well, NET's got you covered. Just pop some popcorn, sit back, relax, and watch Indie Films of Faith on Faith Film Festival at 8 o'clock. But if you are just bound and determined to go to the movies and pay $15 for a Diet Coke, well, that's just fine, but don't walk out the door until you've checked in with our esteemed movie critics on Real Faith. That's coming up at 8:30. Until then, though, you can head over to our website at currentsny.net, watch selected reports and full broadcasts of the show. And you can also find us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter. Our show handle is @CurrentsNY. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Matt McClure. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great night.